Hey everybody, welcome back to Tech Talks, or the rabbit hole as we like to call it. Today we're going to be jumping into how to make virtual networks. So the first thing we're going to do is kind of talk about it, right? Anytime you build a virtual machine, which we went over in the last video on how to build one, but we let it create the virtual network for us. So this time what we want to do is jump in and let's show how we would do that before creating our virtual machine. So the first thing we need, of course, is a resource group. We have a few here. So let's jump to Virtual Networks Blade. You can see it on the left over here under our favorites, or you can go up top and we can type in virtual networks. It takes us right here. So what we want to do is just click Add. This is going to take us to our little wizard here. So if you have a resource group already built, you can come in here and pick it. We're going to use this one that we've got. Now, you'll see the naming on this resource group. It's recommended that you use some kind of naming convention, right? Whatever makes sense for you. But typically, it's going to be initials for what type of resource it is. And then I like to do the function, right? Which this is going to be, let's call it video. And then this is a production environment and the iteration, right? Which one is this? So if you're doing this, so we're doing this for real, right? Let's make this our hub network because we're going to do a hub and spoke. Prod 001. We're going to keep it in West Central US. Now let's look at our IP addresses. So up here, they start you out with a /16. Well, this is where you need to put some forethought into this first, right? Design out however you're going to do your network. That cannot be stressed enough. Always, before you build anything, design this out with someone who understands IP addressing, right, and what you're going to do. So if we're going to connect this to on-prem, we want to make sure nothing overlaps. Everything's unique so you can do it without having to do a bunch of natting. So we're going to use, let's do this. Right. And you'll see it does a validation, gives you a little check mark. So what if I decide I want to have something in here that doesn't make sense? Well, it's going to tell us, hey, that's not valid. And then it's going to give you a suggestion. So if you work with a network engineer and they give you the IP address, the CIDR, and if it doesn't work, you need to go back and talk to them. Right? Now we're going to add a subnet. So we left that on a /16. So on this one, let's do a /24. Right? And make sure you read which box you're putting it in. So let's name this servers, and then we'll put in our /24 CIDR range down here. Now make sure you pay attention to this, right? Azure uses 5 IP addresses, right? So that's going to change your scheme a little bit. Then we're going to come down here. These are service endpoints. They're basically for Azure services. Okay, this allows those services to talk into this VNet, so you don't have to do as much. I always like to have these in here because these are going straight into Microsoft's Azure for different things. Right, so I like to have them in there. So if you're doing some micro segmentation or anything like that, isolation, then you may want to look at that a little bit more closely. For us, we're not. Now we're going to come in here and look at the Bastion host. So a Bastion host is basically a way for you to have a platform managed service that provides you a connection into your virtual network. This is typically used for RDP. You want to make sure nothing's open to the outside. You throw a Bastion host in, you can RDP to it using the Bastion host. DDoS, I hope we don't have to explain what DDoS is. This just gives you some better features for it. right? And you can pick protection plans. This is a pay service. So make sure you look into that before you start clicking the button. Firewall, you can have your own firewall if you want. This will build one out and give it to you. It's always a good idea to have a firewall, right? And this is where Microsoft gets into that layered onion model where they love doing this with security. You have one layer, it peels off, there's another layer, security, and another layer all the way down. So the firewall is one, right? So you would have your firewall, and then you would have a network security group, then you could have application security groups, then you could have your Vnet, then you can have your VMs that are on it, right? Now we're going to come in here to tags, and if we try to do this, so I have a policy in place right now that says if I do not have these 3 tags, it will not create anything, right? So we're going to make sure we have those, and then we're going to do our validation. If we pass, great, and then we're going to create it. Now, if you're looking to do this, infrastructure as code, you can take a look at some of this. This is where your templates are. So this is an ARM template, Azure Resource Manager template. So you can take this, download it, add it into your templates, and then be able to redeploy this anytime you need to, exactly the way it is now. Obviously, if you have one that's like that, you're not going to be able to redeploy the same thing. You'd have to change it a little bit. Now, we have a Vnet Hub Production 001 network. So if we walk through this, now our overview tells us our resource group, our location. Now, if you check your locations, a lot of these have different prices. So like I'm in West Central US, if I put this in West US 2, it's 30% cheaper, right? So those are some of the considerations you'll end up looking at. You'll see our tags, then you would see devices as they connect. So access control, this is your RBAC, role-based access. So if you need to add stuff in here to give people access to do things, right? Let's jump down to settings. This is our address space. We can add additional ranges if we want, throw it in, hit save. Our connected devices again. Now here's our subnets. Now you can see we can add another one, or we can add a gateway subnet, or we can jump into this one. If you're looking at setting up NAT gateways, network security groups, or user-defined routes, this is where you're going to find those, okay? This is also where you can remove your service endpoints, right? And you can see the delegation for subnets in here too. So your network security group, that's another layer. It basically operates inside the firewall, but then it controls port access into that subnet, which is very important. If you had a route table with user-defined routes, or UDRs as they would be called, this is where you could assign it. Then you would just pick it and hit save. DDOS Protection, this is where you can add it after the fact. And if you want more information, they have all these nice links for learn more in here. Your firewall, if you want to create one and add it to the network. Security, this is Security Center recommendations. So you'll be able to come in here and say, hey, we should do this, we shouldn't do that. You will need Azure Defender turned on, right, to get some of this stuff, which is additional cost, of course. Peering. So this is where you come in. So if you're going to have 2 networks, when you build the VNets in Azure, they're built on islands. They're totally isolated. They have no connections to anything else. So what happens is, in a traditional network, you would set up a VPN site to site to connect to another network. In Azure, what's going to happen when you do that, essentially you're saying, okay, take this VPN gateway, go out to the internet, walk around for a little bit, now come back in to Azure on this other network through their gateway, and now we're connected. But what happens is, a lot of times you're going to be charged for egress and ingress transactions. So as those happen, especially across the VPN, right, because that's where they'll get a lot of them, you're going to end up having a lot of charges there. And it's going to be slower, higher latency, more problems, right? But you don't need to do that. Azure has this nice backbone network that connects all of their stuff, right? So what you're going to do is what's called Vnet peering. It's where you tell it, I want to talk from this virtual network to this other virtual network without ever leaving Azure. So it's going to leverage that backbone network in order to connect those two. Now, let's take a look at this. We're going to walk through this. I'm not going to be able to complete it because I don't have more than one network. So the first thing you do, now notice this. This will say this virtual network. This is the one you're starting on, right? Vnet Prod Hub 01. Okay. And we scrolled too far. So what you're going to do is give it a name, right? So this is what I like to do. I like to take these and then I put this in and then I do an underscore to underscore and destination network, right? So this would be Vnet, let's see, say we have servers, right? Prod 001. Okay. This would tell me immediately looking at this, this is the link from here to here. Now we want it to traffic to be allowed to go to the remote network. So you can block it if you want. If you want to, for some reason, have peering but not let traffic talk to it, then you could do that. This would really only be useful if you're doing some kind of UDP traffic and you only want it to send. You never want it to come back, right? You could do that. You could have peering that only worked one way. So now you want traffic forwarded from the remote network. You want traffic to be allowed to come in, right? Now this is your gateway. So if you are doing a hub and spoke, right, and you have a gateway on your other one, right? So this one's our hub. We'd have to build a network gateway on this one, and then we would say use this network's gateway, right? And that would allow traffic to traverse some kind of VPN or express route in order to get to your on-prem network. Now you come down here and you'll notice it's asking you same questions, really. So you come in here, you'll see this is the remote. This is your destination network. So you give it a name. I usually copy the same one and just reverse it. Now we're going to use the resource manager because that's the easiest one. And what subscription and what your destination virtual network is, right? And then here's your same questions. But this time you're going to say use remote virtual networks gateway because you're the other one coming back. I want to use the hub's virtual gateway. Then you click add. Now this is going to build both sides of this. So if you're doing this across subscriptions from one subscription to another, you're going to need to have contributor access on both subscriptions or this is going to fail. Right? Now we're going to jump back in here. Service endpoints. This is where you'll see those. As we go down, there's private endpoints. If you've got some of those set up, you'll see them in here. Diagnostic settings. So this section down, this is your troubleshooting, right? So this is where you come in and you can say, well, I want to send all this stuff to a log analytics workspace. And we don't have any right now. You'd have to create one and have it in here. You can add this after the fact. You name it and then just tell it you want the metrics or the VM protection alerts. You can throw it to a storage account or even stream it to an event hub. Storage accounts are good if you're going to leverage Power BI, right? You could leverage Power BI and then start doing some fancy stuff in there to kind of see your trend analysis and stuff. So log analytics is where we add that. It's going to add a diagnostic. Usually takes about 15 minutes for it to actually build. And then we're going to come in here. And if we go to these logs down here, then this is where you would see that information. You would be able to build queries, and there's a lot of pre-built queries in here that would tell you, what's my transmit packets, what's my received, common errors, top connections, those kind of things. That's where you're going to see these in here. Connection monitor. This is where you can build monitors. You do have to have virtual machines on the network to build them. So what you would want to do is just pick some virtual machines that are always going to be on, right? And you could build monitors in here, and then it would allow you to check the connection from this VM to this other VM. So this is handy if you're doing peering and you want to be able to just test, right? Diagram. This is your best friend if you are trying to do Visio diagrams, right? You have to have Network Watcher enabled for it, which you should anyway. It's free. It's a great troubleshooting tool, which we will cover in another video. So you would be able to just download the topology, and this is going to build out with the little Microsoft diagrams an SVG file that has this network where everything's at. Right, all the way down to the network interfaces, which is fantastic. You can download that, copy and paste it, throw it in your diagram. As we go down, this is where you can download your templates if you need them after the fact. Tasks, if you need to put in some kind of automated tasks, you can put them in here. Right, so if you want to make sure, hey, what's my cost? You can build them in here. You can build your own templates and have them in here. And then troubleshooting. So connection troubleshooting. This is where you can come in here and say, I want to test from this VM to this other VM. And it gives you, a little bit in here. So you can do testing across port 80, 443, anything like that. And you'd be able to see like, hey, is this getting blocked? Is there a network security group in place? A firewall that's not letting it through? So that's a great first step for troubleshooting. And if you do have any issues that are kind of beyond the basics here and you want to get some help, always come into the network and click the network support request, and it's going to generate a bunch of diagnostic information for you. And when you do this support requests, right, it's going to take you over here. You can always put in Azure support requests, and they'll go to Microsoft. You've got your SLA for that. You do have to have a support contract with them, but as you go through, you'll put in what your problem is. It's going to try to solve it for you, right? You'll come here to this solutions tab over here, and then it's going to say, okay, well, what's your problem? You type it in. Here's common solutions. Here's diagnostics you can run. They'll check everything on the back end. It's automated. It makes a great help when you're actually trying to get something solved quickly, right? All right, so that's everything we have for Vnets today. Hope you liked the video. Like, subscribe, share it, come visit us on our website. And if you have suggestions for other videos, something you'd like to see, please leave it in the comments. Let us know. Thank you.